Okay, so this video is going to cover writing equations for hyperbolas, and it's going to cover the homework assignment that is 4.3F. So we already did the graphing slides. So we're going to start here on finding the equation of the hyperbola. So what we're going to do is you're going to use the information that's given to determine is your graph vertical or horizontal. Then you'll find the center. You're going to find your A and your B values. Remember that C squared is equal to A squared plus B squared. Your transverse axis is equal to 2 times A. And this is a vocabulary term for our book. But again, what it means is the axis that your graph touches. And then the conjugate axis would be 2 times B. So let's go ahead and take a look at our first example. So they're giving us a foci and our vertices. Again, it really helps me if I do a rough sketch here. Doesn't have to be perfect. It's just going to help you to see where your graph, which axis it's transversing. So I have a focus at -3 and +3, 0. Soon as though you see you have zeros in your order pairs, that should be a clue which axis it's transversing. And then the 2 vertices are at -2, +2. So we can already see that the graph here is going to transverse the x-axis. So it's going to look like this. So we know it's going to be horizontal. So in our equation, we're going to put x squared first. Now, remember, the center is always the midpoint of either the vertices or the focus point, depending on what you're given. So I can already see that my center, or the midpoint of these two, is going to be 0, 0. Now, you could also do the midpoint formula, but again, since it's already transversing the x-axis, I can already see that this is going to be -C, 0, and this is +C, 0. This is -A, 0, and +A, 0. Because remember, your vertices are always at positive and -A, 0. Your focus points are always at +C and -C, 0, whenever the center is at 0, 0, and whenever the graph is horizontal. So the equation I'm going to be filling in, since my center point here is 0, 0, since it's touching the x-axis, x squared goes first. A squared is always the bottom of the first one, and then y squared over b squared. So I need to figure out my a squared and my b squared value, and then I'm done. I can figure out my a squared value. I could either look at my vertice order pair, or I know that the value of a is the distance that the vertice is from the center. And I can see that this is 2 spaces away. So my a value is 2. So a squared is 4. I could have also found my a value from the vertice order pair. So now I need to find b squared, and I'm going to use the formula c squared equals a squared plus b squared. Because I can also get my c value, and remember the c value is the distance from the center to the focus. And I can see that that's 3. I could have also gotten it from the original order pairs. So my c value is 3, so c squared is 9. So 9 equals 4 plus b squared. Subtract the 4. 5 is equal to b squared. I don't need to square root it because what I'm filling in is b squared. So now that I have b squared and a squared, all I have to do is fill it in. So x squared over 4 minus y squared over 5, and I am finished. And that is my equation given those 2 focus points and the 2 vertices. Next example, again, give yourself a visual so you can see where these vertices are landing. So we have -1 and +1 for the 2 vertices. So we can already see that it's transversing the x-axis. So I can see that the equation I'm going to be filling in, and again, I can see that the midpoint of these two is that center point, and it's 0, 0. So my center is 0, 0. My A value is the distance from the center to the vertice. So my A is 1. I could also have gotten it from the order pairs because remember these vertices are positive and negative A, comma 0. Notice the A is in the X spot. So this tells me that the equation I'm filling in is going to be x squared over a squared minus y squared over b squared equals 1. Remember, a squared is always the denominator of the first fraction. Now, this time they gave me an asymptote. So what you need to memorize here is that when it is horizontal, the asymptote is going to be b over a. So my asymptote equation is going to be y equals positive and negative b over a. So what I'm going to do is, since they gave me the asymptotes, I can change this y equals positive and negative 4 over 1. I can change the whole number 4, add a 1 to the bottom. So now what I'll do is I'm going to set up an equation. B over a is equal to 4 over 1. Now I'm only using the positive value here because again, once I square it, it's going to become positive. So I'm going to go ahead and treat this as a proportion. So what I need to do is cross multiply. So 4a is equal to b times 1. So b is equal to 4 times a. And I already knew that a equals 1. So b is equal to 4 times 1, and b is equal to 4. Now, if you would have preferred at this point for the proportion, if you want to fill in what a equals, you could also have done b over 1, fill in what a equals 4 over 1, and then it goes right to the answer. Either way. So now that I found the value of b, I have to square it because remember you're filling in b squared. So 4 squared, so b squared equals 16. This is what I'm going to fill in down here. And then I'm going to fill in my a value. I have to square it. So once I do that, a squared equals 1. So that's what I'll fill in here. So my final answer here is x squared over 1 minus y squared over 16 equals 1. Remember, we can go ahead and not write that denominator of 1 and just leave it like this. So either answer here is acceptable. The next one, again, give yourself a visual so you can see which way the graph is going. This time they gave us the 2 focus points. So I have one at positive 5, 0, comma positive 5, 0, comma negative 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I can see that my 2 focus points are right here. So you can already see that it's transversing the y-axis. So I'm going to put y squared first. Notice the center point here is the midpoint of these two. And again, it's going to be 0, 0. So my center is 0, 0. And because my focus points are on the y-axis, the equation I'm going to be filling in is y squared over a squared, x squared over b squared equals 1. So because it is vertical, what you're going to memorize is your asymptote is going to be a over b. So my asymptote here, when it's vertical, is y equals positive and negative a over b. So now I'm going to go ahead and take the 3/4, and this is what I can plug in for my a over b. So a over b is equal to 3/4. Now, I can also figure out my c value. So let me go ahead and do that. So my c value is the distance from the center to the focus. So this is 5. So c squared equals 25. Now, we don't know if this 3/4 that's in my asymptote is a simplified fraction or not. So I can't just square the 3 and square the 4 and put it into my equation and say, hey, I'm done. You know, potentially it could be. It could be 3 squared and 4 squared for my a squared and b squared, but it may not always be the case. This problem, it actually is. You could have squared the 3 and squared the 4 and then call it a day and be done. However, we need to double check that it's not a simplified fraction. So what I'm going to do here is cross multiply, and I get 3b is equal to 4a, divide by 3, and b is equal to 4/3 a. Now, notice I have two variables still. I need to plug it in to the c squared equals a squared plus b squared. So I'm going to plug in for my b value this 4/3 times a. So my c value is 25. A squared, I don't know. B squared is going to be 4/3 a, and I have to square that. So then this now becomes a squared plus 16/9 a squared. I need to add these two like terms. So in front of a squared here, it's an assumed 1. So because I'm going to be adding these two fractions, I'm going to change that 1 into 9/9. I'm going to add that, and I get 25/9 a squared. I need to isolate a squared, so I'm dividing by 25/9, which is really multiplied by the reciprocal. Notice the 20, so this simplifies, and I just end up with a squared over here. This also simplifies, and a squared equals 9. So in this particular case, if you were running out of time and you saw this on an SAT and it was a multiple choice answer, technically you could have just taken the 3 and the 4 and square it, and that would have given you your a squared and b squared. But it's not always the case, because that asymptote could have been a simplified fraction. So now that I have a squared, I need to plug it back into c squared equals a squared plus b squared again, and then I need to find my b squared. So 25, 9 plus b squared, I can go ahead and subtract 9, and 16 equals b squared. So now that I have my a squared, my b squared, now I can plug it back into the equation. So the final answer here is y squared over 9 minus x squared over 16 equals 1. So now we're going to go through given two vertices and going through an ordered pair. So again, let me give myself the visual to see if it's horizontal or vertical. So I have a vertice at 0, +2 and -2. So my vertices are right here and here. Again, the midpoint of those is my center. So it's 0, 0. So I do have a center here, still at 0, 0. And I can get my a value is the distance between the center and the vertices. So a is 2, so a squared is 4. And then it says it's passing through this ordered pair of -2, +5. So it's up here. So I know my parabola is going to look like this to hit that ordered pair up here of the -2, 5. Remember, this is your x, this is your y when they give you an ordered pair. So because my center is 0, 0, and because it's transversing the y-axis, the equation I'm filling in is going to be y squared over a squared minus x squared over b squared equals 1. So remember, what we're looking to fill in is a squared and b squared. All we have so far is a squared. and an ordered pair. So I'm going to use this equation, and I'm going to fill in the ordered pair and my a squared value. So my y value from the ordered pair is 5. I got to square it. My a squared is 4. My x value is -2 from that ordered pair, and I don't know b squared. So I'm going to go ahead and square. And now I need to work on isolating b squared. So I need to subtract 25 over 4. I'm going to change the whole number 1 and make it a fraction. So I'm actually going to change this 1, and I'm going to make it 4 over 4. So it has a common denominator to subtract the 25 over 4. So -4 over b squared equals -21 over 4. Whenever I have two fractions set equal to each other, I'm going to solve this as a proportion. So I'm going to do the cross products. So I'll multiply this diagonal times this diagonal, and I end up with -21b squared equals -16. I need to divide both sides by -21. b squared is equal to negative divided by a negative 16 over 21, and it's positive now. I don't need to square root it. Remember, the only thing I needed to write my equation here was filling in a squared and b squared. And now I have everything I need. So y squared over 4 minus x squared over 16 over 21. Again, be able to recognize that you can also change this fraction denominator and move the 21 to the top. So another acceptable answer would have been 21x squared over 16 equals 1. Now, the whole math behind this switch is you're really dividing x squared divided by 16 over 21. And we got to keep flip change it. So it becomes x squared over 1 times 21 over 16. And that's how we get to change it into 21 x squared over 16. That's how we get this. So be able to recognize both forms, because sometimes on an SAT or a multiple choice test, you may end up seeing both versions of it. So be able to recognize both. Try another example. Next one. This time you're given x-intercepts. So again, let's give ourselves a visual. So I'm graphing -3, +3 on the x-axis. And then I'm also graphing the focus points at +5, -5. So I also have my focus points here. So again, we can already see that it's transversing the x-axis. So our parabola, not our parabola, our hyperbola would look like this. Oops. And again, we would find the midpoint of the two vertices or the midpoint of the focus points. Again, my center here is still at 0, 0. So that's my center point. And you can see that it's transversing the x-axis. So what we're going to be filling in is x squared over a squared minus y squared over b squared equals 1. I can get my a value by either finding how far away the center is from the vertice, and you can see that it's 3 spaces away. So a squared is 9. My C value is the distance from the center to the focus. So my C value is 5. In order to find B squared, I need to use the formula C squared equals A squared plus B squared. So I'm going to fill in C squared, which is 5 squared, which is 25. Fill in A squared, which was 9. And I'm solving for B squared. So I subtract 9. And b squared equals 16. Now I have everything I need to fill in for my equation. So x squared over 9 minus y squared over 16 equals 1. Okay, let's try another example. Again, give yourself a visual. So I have the y-intercepts. So at 0, 9, 0, negative 9. Then they gave me the two focus points, which are at 0, 15 and 0, negative 15. So these are my focus points. So again, what we can see here is these y-intercepts, these are actually our vertices. So our center point here, the midpoint of these two, is that center of 0, 0. So again, we can see it's transversing the y-axis. So our equation that we're going to be filling in is y squared over a squared, x squared over b squared equals 1. So again, I can find my a squared value, or my a value first, by figuring out how far away these vertices are from the center. And you can see your a value is 9. So a squared is going to be 81. Now I also have my c value. It's the distance from the center to the foci. And this c value is 15. So c squared is 225. So in order to find b squared, I have to use c squared equals a squared plus b squared. So I'm going to fill in the 225 for c squared. I'm going to fill in 81 for a squared, and I don't know b squared. Subtract 81, 144 equals b squared. Now I have everything I need in order to fill in these two numbers. So my final answer here is going to be y squared over 81, x squared over 144 equals 1. And that is my equation given the y-intercepts and the two foci. Let's try another example. This time you're going to be given the vertices and an asymptote, the asymptotes. So again, give yourself a visual. You can see your vertices are over here at positive 10, 0, negative 10, 0. So you can already see it's transversing the x-axis. So we can see that the center here, again, is at 0, 0. That would be the midpoint between those vertices. My a value here is 10. So a squared is 100. Now this time they gave me an asymptote. And whenever my hyperbola is horizontal, I know my asymptotes are y equals plus or minus b over ax. So I can change this 5 into 5 over 1. So I'm going to be setting b over a is equal to 5 over 1. Now I already know my a value. I can come back over here, a equals 10. So I'm going to replace this a here with a 10. So I'll set this up as b over 10 is equal to 5 over 1. So b times 1 is b, and 10 times 5 is 50. So b squared is 50 squared, so 2,500. So now I have enough to fill in my equation. And again, the standard form, since it's transversing the x-axis, what I'm filling in is the x squared over a squared, y squared over b squared equals 1. So x squared over 100, y squared over 2,500 equals 1. It's your final equation. Let's try another one. This time vertices and passing through an order pair. Again, give yourself a visual. Notice these vertices are on the y-axis, so it's going to be transversing the y-axis. Again, the midpoint of these two is going to be 0, 0. So my a value is the distance from that center to the vertices. So my a value is 5. So a squared is 25. Now this time it's passing through the order pair 310. So 1, 2, 3, and then it's way up here. So you can already see your parabola is going like this. Your order pair is your x and your y. So because it's transversing the y-axis, I'm going to be filling in y squared over a squared minus x squared over b squared equals 1. So again, I'm going to plug in this order pair for x and y. And then I'm also going to be able to plug in my a squared, and I'm solving for b squared. So once I plug in, my y value was 10. So I'm doing 10 squared. My a squared, I already squared it, it's 25. My x was 3. I don't know b squared. So let me square these. I get 100 over 25, 9 over b squared. I could simplify 100 over 25, make it 4. So 9 over b squared equals 1. Subtract the 4, and I get negative 9 over b squared equals negative 3. Again, I could turn this into a proportion, cross multiply. So negative 3b squared equals negative 9. Divide by negative 3, and b squared equals positive 3. So now I have b squared. I have a squared from finding the distance from the center to that vertice, and now I can fill everything in. So then next, my final answer here is going to be y squared over 25 minus x squared over 3 equals 1. And I'm done. Another one, let's give ourselves a visual. Again, my focus point here is at positive and negative 3 square root 5. So the square root of 5 is in between the square root of 4 and the square root of 9. So between 2 and 3, it's closer to the 4. So maybe about 2.2, we'll say, is approximately the square root of 5. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So I have my 2 focus points here, right here a little bit past the 2. So we can already see that it's transversing the y-axis. So over here, when I go to fill this in, the x-axis. So my equation I'm filling in is going to be x squared over a squared, y squared over b squared equals 1. So the midpoint of these 2 focus points is 0, 0. So I can get my c value here. My c value is going to be 3 square root 5. So once I square it, 3 square root 5 squared, this is going to give me 9 times 5. So c squared equals 45. So now what I need to do is also realize that when my graph is horizontal, my asymptotes here, this y equals, it's going to be y equals plus or minus b over ax. So what I'm going to do is take this whole number 2, and I can make it a fraction. So b over a is equal to 2 over 1. So what I need to do here is go ahead and solve this for b. So b times 1, 2 times a. Now, I know I have 2 variables here, but I don't have any other choice. So I need to now take c squared equals a squared plus b squared. I'm plugging 45 in for the c squared. I'm plugging 2a in for the b. And then I have to square it. So 45 equals a squared plus 4a squared. Add my like terms here. This becomes 5a squared equals 45. Divide by 5, and 9 equals a squared. Now that I have c squared and a squared, I got to plug it in one more time into c squared equals a squared plus b squared. And then solving this will give me my b squared. So subtract 9. 45 minus 9 is 36. Now I have b squared and a squared, and now I can plug them in. So the final answer here is x over 9 minus y squared, x squared over 9, y squared over 36 equals 1. And that's your final equation given a focus and an asymptote. Try another one. This time we're given vertices and an asymptote. So my vertices 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I have one at 5, negative 2, and positive 1, negative 2. So these are my 2 vertices. So in order to calculate the center, I'm going to find the midpoint here. So I can add 5 plus 1 divide by 2, negative 2 plus negative 2 divide by 2, 6 over 2, negative 4 over 2. This gives me 3, negative 2 is my center point. So my center is here. I can go ahead and graph it. So it's right here. And now I can find the distance from the center to that vertice, and it's got a distance of 2. So a squared equals 4. And now I need to find my b value, and I'm going to get that from my asymptote. So over here, whenever your graph is horizontal, The asymptote slope here is b over a. So I'm going to set b over a equal to 3 over 2. I also already have my a value, so I'm going to plug it in here. So I have b over 2 equals 3 over 2. Remember, these are equivalent fractions, so you really don't need to go through the solving process. You can already see that b is going to be 3. So divide, and b equals 3. Square it, b squared is 9. Now I have everything I need to fill in my equation. I've got my a squared, my b squared, and my center. So my final equation here, I'm going to be filling in x minus h squared over a squared, y minus k squared over b squared equals 1. So I'll fill in, and I get x minus 3 squared over 4 minus y minus negative 2, so it's positive 2 over 9 equals 1. And that is your final equation. So this is going to give us an example where our center is not going to be at 0, 0. So in order to double check that, we're going to go ahead and graph it to give ourselves the visual. So I've got a vertice at 1, 2. And then I've got another one at 9, 2. And again, this visual that you give yourself does not have to be perfect. It's just to give yourself an idea of what your graph is going to look like. Then I have a focus point at 0, 2 and 10, 2. So you can already see that your graph is going to look like this. So it's horizontal. So the equation I'm going to be filling in is going to be the x squared first. And again, my center is the midpoint of the two blue vertices. But let me go ahead and fill this in, and then I'm going to calculate the center point. So x minus h squared over a squared. A squared is always the denominator of the first one, over y minus k squared over b squared. So in order to calculate the center point here, if you've graphed it, you could just count the squares, and you can see that it's 1, 2, 3, 4. It's going to be at 5, 2. Another way to do it is to calculate the midpoint of those two ordered pairs. So I'm going to add 1 plus 9 divide by 2, 2 plus 2 divide by 2. I get 10 over 2, 4 over 2, and then that gives me the ordered pair 5, 2. This is my center of my hyperbola. So my center, my HK, is going to be the ordered pair 5, 2. Now, I can now calculate how far away the center is from my vertex. And I can see that from this ordered pair, which was 10, 2, I can see that my A value is going to be from 5, this is 9, 2. So my A value is 4. So from 5 to 9 is 4. So my A squared value is 16. My C value is the distance from the center to the focus. And you can see from 5, 2 to 0, 2, you can see that my C value is going to be 5. So C squared is 25. Now, what I need to fill in my equation is I'm filling in the center, I'm filling in A squared, but now I need to find B squared. So I use the formula C squared equals A squared plus B squared. So my C value was 5, so 5 squared is 25. My A value is 4, 4 squared is 16. And now I'm going to solve for B squared by subtracting 16. And B squared equals 9. So now I have everything I need to fill into my equation. So my final answer here is going to be x minus 5 squared. A squared in the bottom is 16. Y minus 2 squared over 9 equals 1. And that is your standard form when the center is not at the origin. All right, next one. It's not in the notes. I'm going to add a page. So this time we're still writing the equation, and I'm going to give you vertices, and they're going to be 0, 2, 6, 2, and then I'm going to give you the asymptote. So my asymptote is going to be y equals 2/3 x and y equals 4 minus 2/3 x. Notice they've distributed here. So I need to go ahead and give myself a visual to see which axis my graph is transversing. So it's at the order pair 0, 2 and 6, 2. So I have a vertex here and here. So you can already see that it's going to be transversing the x-axis because they're horizontal, they're side by side. So the equation I'm going to be filling in is x minus h squared over a squared, y minus k squared over b squared equals 1. This is the horizontal graph. What you need to memorize for your asymptote is when it's horizontal, the equation we're using is y equals k plus or minus b over a, and then x minus h. So I can already see here, let me go ahead and find my center. The center is the midpoint of the two vertices. So I'm going to do 0 plus 6, divide by 2, and 2 plus 2, divide by 2. So 6 over 2, 4 over 2. My center is the order pair 3, 2. So notice in my equation, let's see, let's go ahead and graph this. So my center, 1, 2, 3. So here's my center point. Now remember, these asymptotes have had the everything simplified and distributed. So let's go ahead now and figure out what we've got going on here. So we can already see our slope, our b over a, is the 2/3 on either one. So I need to set up my equation here. So I'm going to do b over a is equal to 2/3. I already can find my a value from my visual. So from the center to the vertice, I can already see that there are 3 spaces from this order pair 3, 2 to the 6, 2. So my a value is 3. So a squared, when I fill it in, is going to be 9. But in my proportion here, or my equation, I can fill in a equals 3. So now b over 3 equals 2 over 3. Now I can already see that my b is going to be 2. It wasn't a simplified fraction, but if you go ahead and solve the proportion and get 3b equals 6, divide by 3, and b equals 2. So b squared is going to equal 4. So now I have everything I needed. I needed to fill in my equation. I needed to find a squared. I needed to find b squared. And I needed to find the center point. So now we can fill everything in. And it's x minus 3 squared over 9 minus y minus 2 squared over 4 equals 1. So again, we're still writing the equation of the hyperbola. I'm going to be giving you vertices again. So the vertices are going to be at 5, 3, 5, -3. And this time it's going to pass through the point 0, 5. So remember, the point is always your xy. So let me go ahead and give myself the visual. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3. I've got a vertex here. And then I've got another one at -3. 1, 2, 3. So at 5, -3. So you see how the vertices are on top of each other? So this is going to be vertical. I can also find my center point by either calculating the midpoint of these. So 5 plus 5, divide by 2, 3 plus negative 3, divide by 2, 10 over 2, 0 over 2, 5 comma 0. Now, you can also have just found the midpoint from the picture. So this is your center, 5 comma 0. And again, remember this was the order pair 5 comma 3, 5 comma negative 3. So we can get our A value by seeing that it's 3 spaces away. So A equals 3. So A squared is going to be 9. So this is my center. And I already have A squared. It's 9. Now, I need to find my B squared. But I know nothing about the focus, but I do have an order pair. So I'm going to take the equation that I'm going to be filling in, which is going to be the y minus k, because it's vertical, over a squared, x minus h squared over b squared equals 1. I'm going to fill in x, y, and a, or a squared. So I'm going to fill in my y value was 5 of my order pair. So the point here is what I'm using. So 5 minus 0 squared over 9, which is the a squared, 0 minus 5 squared over b squared. I'm going to simplify. 5 squared is 25. Same thing here. And again, I need to move 25 over 9 to the other side. So I'm going to change this whole number 1 into 9 over 9. So I have a common denominator. So it's now negative 25 over b squared is equal to negative 16 over 9. I'm going to solve this as a proportion. Negative 16b squared is equal to negative 25 times 9. So 9 quarters is $2.25. And then divide by negative 16. So my b squared, and I don't need to square root it, but I do need to divide negative divided by a negative and make it positive 225 over 16. So now I have everything I need to fill in. My b squared, my a squared, and my center. So the answer here is going to be y minus 0 squared over 9 minus x minus 5 squared over 225 over 16 equals 1. You can leave it like this. Also get rid of this minus 0 and just leave it as y squared, or y squared over 9 minus 16 times x minus 5 squared over 225 equals 1.